Welcome to another edition of the Empower Hour. I am AlQamar.
And I'm Hanifah.
And we are your hosts each and every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. where we come to you with impactful topics of discussion that affect our everyday lives. As you know, today will be no different. We have a special guest with us today, our brother Umar Johnson. Dr. Umar, are you there with us?
Yes, I am. Peace and love, Queen. Thanks for having me on the show.
Peace and blessings to you. And welcome to the show. And we thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, because I've seen your lineup and I see how busy you are these days. Look like you're doing a whole tour around the country. And so for you to take time out of that to come to us for this 1 hour, we certainly appreciate you for that.
Thank you, and I apologize that I wasn't able to join in by way of Facebook Live, but I'm suspended by Facebook until December the 20th, so I don't have any capability to go live or post anything at all until December 20th, for reasons unknown to me, by the way.
Wow, oh, I see. Well, that seems to be the trend here lately. Anybody that has a powerful voice out there that's talking strong on behalf of black people seem to be the ones that's always getting removed or bumped off of these social media platforms. So that doesn't surprise me any.
Very true.
Yeah, just briefly, what pressing issues are you working on these days?
Well, I just returned from Detroit, where we had a State of the Black Children Conference that was hosted by one of the Queen Mother activists out in Motown, the Motor City, and we were dealing with the rising trend of child protective service agencies in the black community across the country who are confiscating, stealing, and snatching our children away from their parents for the most frivolous of reasons. And the conspiracy behind this Child Protective Services campaign is, it appears that they're doing it for four main motivations. Number one, to make sure that the LGBTQ, the homosexual community, has enough children that they can foster care and thusly live off of. Because as you know, black children are the least likely to be adopted by their own community. Yep. And because of that, our children are more likely to end up in the hands of gay and lesbian couples. So given the strength that the LGBT movement has garnered in this country as a result of a kindly push that they received from President Barack Obama, they're able to dictate policy in this country. And one of those policies is this policy of taking children away from parents for frivolous reasons so they can be handed over to the gay and lesbian couples to be raised and made money off of. Number two, the drug industrial cartel. So we have all of these psychiatric drug companies that produce medicines for children. Everything from the Ritalin, the Adderall, the Concerta, the Cyclix, the Risperdal, the Depakote. Well, these companies are multi-billion-dollar entities. They all publicly trade on Wall Street. So when black parents, as a result of Dr. Umar Johnson's work and the work of other people in this field, are educating black parents to stop putting their children on drugs, that interrupts the profit stream for these corporations on Wall Street. So what they do is they influence and motivate Child Protective Services to start taking children away from parents who refuse to medicate them. Now, mind you, you can't even prove that these disorders exist. ADHD, conduct disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, these are philosophical disorders, meaning they only exist as an idea in mind. They don't exist as anything scientifically that can be proven. So what the drug companies want CPS to do, if the parents don't want to drug their children, which means it's affecting our profit margin, take the children from the parents and then you drug them. And the research shows us that black children who are confiscated from their parents and put in foster care situations are twice, 3 times as likely to be doped up and drugged up as our children who still live with their parents. Number 3, another reason why they want to take children away from the parents is because the United States government needs a high population of black babies that they can pretty much use essentially as research monkeys, as pet experiment dummies, so they can try out their latest diseases, their latest immunizations, their latest social experiments. So America needs children too. You can't buy children, you can't make children. So if you need children for government experiments, you can't buy them, you can't make them, that means you have to steal them from black people. And the fourth reason why Child Protective Services is taking our children away from us is because there is a very, very large, well-organized, well-protected pedophile ring in this country. I'm not talking ghetto pedophilia, and I'm not just talking Roman Catholic Church pedophilia. I'm talking judges, I'm talking politicians, I'm talking preachers, I'm talking business owners, I'm talking billionaires and millionaires, both white and black, who enjoy sex with children and who have such a fetish for molesting children of all races, but especially black children, that they depend on the Child Protective Service system to get kids away from the parents, funnel them through the foster and adoptive care center, and then the adoptive centers and the foster parents are in on the pedophile ring because they in turn get paid more money to supply these children to the pedophile circles.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, and I can definitely vouch for a lot of what you're saying because personally speaking, I've known some folks who told me that they're on the roster for the government subsidized, the welfare, food stamps, things of that nature. And I've heard from more than one source that if your child, they'll give you more money every month on welfare if your child takes the medication, if your child is on medication.
Yes.
The mental
you
medications.
Get paid more. Yes. Well, foster parents get paid more.
Right.
If the child has a mental health diagnosis and takes medicine. And even if the child lives with their own parents, the incentive for parents, as you just mentioned, to keep drugging their children is the Social Security disability income checks that they will get.
Right.
So basically the government is indirectly providing incentives for parents to medicate the child.
Right.
Now let me also say this. This CPS slave trade that's going on, because that's in essence what it is, it's a slave trade for our children, it also has some very visionary agendas behind it. And what I mean by that is this. They use the mass incarceration system to strip the men away from the children. They also use the mass incarceration system to strip the women away from the children. In fact, I would argue that one of the reasons black women are the fastest growing prison population in America is because, again, for those same four reasons, if we can lock the mother up, if we can incarcerate the females who are responsible for raising 75% of black children in America anyway, now there's nobody there to protect the child from the government agenda or the drug company agenda or the pedophile agenda or the LGBT agenda. So one of the reasons why so many black mothers are being arrested is to provide justification for why these children are being funneled to the system. But the point I wanted to make is this. If you're locking up the fathers, and if you are taking the boys away from the mothers, because this CPS thing is primarily male. It's girls too, yes, but it's primarily male. So if you're taking the adult males out of the house and the community, and you're taking the male children out of the house and out of the community, you're basically socially engineering a black community that is almost exclusively female. And this is why we see such large rates of lesbianism in the black community, because there's not enough men for the women. And then by taking the boys away and destroying them, there won't be enough young men for our daughters when they become the age of consent. So we're looking at what this is all about, and it's about the destruction of the black family, and the prison system and the Child Protective Service industry has a lot to do with it.
Dr. Umar, I am listening to you, and I totally agree with you, but there's the other side of it for me, and this is what I want to ask. Where is the responsibility on us as a people, because yes, the Child Protective Service, I mean, you're correct. There are things that kids are taken away from their parents for, that you look at and say that could have been worked out. They could have put some services in place and left the child in the home even. But then there are real issues as to where the safety of the child is an issue, where there is a pedophile in the home and the parent refused to put that person out. So the state steps in and says, well, this is child endangerment, failure to protect your child. What is the responsibility of the community in a situation like that before it even gets to state level?
That's a great question. And to that, I would say this. There are black people who commit violent crimes. However, because there are some black people who commit violent crimes, that does not justify police indiscriminately taking the lives of black people who don't commit crimes.
Correct.
There are black parents who, no doubt, and I can speak to this because I've seen it myself as a school principal, I see it as a school psychologist. I work in the schools. And there are cases where we do have to call Child Protective Services on parents because of abuse and neglect. A child being left in a home all week by themselves with nothing to eat. A child being sexually molested by the mother's boyfriend. A child being physically abused, to the point of permanent scars on the body. These things happen. We see the stories where some mothers put the children in microwaves and things like that. So without question, we are not saying that there are not cases that justify Child Protective Services taking children out of the home. What we are saying is the greater percentage of black children who are taken and stolen away from their parents and from the black community, they are being taken and stolen for frivolous reasons, unjustifiable reasons, and then they are given over to the foster care system where controversially, hypocritically, ironically, and paradoxically, they are exposed to much more abuse than what was potentially present in the home from which they were removed. And this issue we have with this. See, the notion that they're just doing their job would hold true if parents were given some form of due process. And I don't know if y'all know this, but when it comes to Child Protective Services, like criminal law, parents are not automatically given a right to due process. You're not automatically allowed to challenge a decision which is usually made by a single caseworker working a single case.
Wow. Wow, I didn't know that. Let's talk about this quote-unquote gay agenda. Ironically, I was just online the other night listening to our brother, the Irritated Genie, talk about this Kevin Hart scenario with him being booted from the Oscars for not apologizing. I logged off of that and immediately on my stream found another brother that has a large following talking about the same issue. He was saying how the LGBTQ community is so aggressive against anybody who comes, who doesn't agree with their lifestyle.
Yeah.
I listened to that, and then the very next following morning, I wake up and go onto Instagram and find you discussing the same, having the same discussion. So it seems like this whole LGBTQ discussion, I think a lot of us are becoming frustrated with all of this aggression from this community. Can you elaborate or speak a little bit about that and how it looks currently in our community?
Certainly. Well, not only is Kevin Hart a recent casualty in this LBGT war, this army, this mafia that they have, and we call it that because LGBT is the first social issue in American history that you are not allowed to disagree with. I mean, let's just take a moment to understand that. All of America's history, you could disagree with anything you want. Muslims could disagree with Christians, okay? Republicans could disagree with Democrats. Poor people can disagree with the wealthy. You know, you always had a right to an opinion. In fact, the Constitution allegedly protects your right to it. The Bill of Rights allegedly protects your right to an opinion and the expression of it. But when it comes to the homosexual movement, you don't have any constitutional rights to disagree with that. When it comes to the LGBT crusade, you don't have any Bill of Rights protections to express your disagreement with this lifestyle. And so, as you know, with Kevin Hart, they went back almost a decade and found some tweets that he made, allegedly insensitive tweets about homosexuals that he apologized for, retracted millions of times. And of course, Kevin Hart and I, we're from the same North Philadelphia neighborhood. I mean, he made it clear, you know, rightly or wrongly, that he made a mistake. But yet and still, they decide to bring this up to try to, you know, sabotage him becoming an host at the Oscars. Well, yesterday, we just saw our sister Sandra Bland, who was murdered by the police in Texas. There's a new HBO documentary on her life and assassination. And guess what? A black LGBT organization came out and said they're not going to support the Sandra Bland documentary. Now, this is a black woman who was murdered by the police, lynched in a jail cell in Texas. If you have gay black people saying, because she did not support us, we're not going to support her documentary. Well, excuse me. Since when did gay sex become more important than black life? Since when did gay sex become more important than black life? The Sandra Bland issue ain't just about Sandra Bland. It's about her and the rest of us, because police genocide is a big issue in the black community. Probably the most, dangerous risk to African life right now is police genocide. Not high blood pressure, not diabetes, not heart disease, police, i.e. white males. And so for the gay community to try to drive a wedge of dissension within the black community is unacceptable. But we as a community are responsible for this. Because while Barack Hussein Obama, 44th President of the United States, was pushing this gay agenda on our community, we sat down and said nothing. Barack Obama wasn't challenged by a single black organization as to why he was protecting and promoting the homosexual agenda in the black community, to include the school building. So we are partly responsible for the momentum that the black LGBT movement has in our community, because we let Barack Obama ignite a match under it, and we did nothing about it for 8 years.
Dr. Umar, so can you tell me if there is a difference, what the difference is? We had a situation with a brother, I can't think of his name, but this is the brother who was shot down by the police, but they found some video tapings of him, and I guess it was his Asian girlfriend, and he was bashing black women. And I struggled with the idea that women that look like me couldn't really separate the two, that this was a part of police brutality. It became a thing of, we're not speaking up, we're not using his voice, our voice for him, because he didn't love us. And I guess I'm trying to understand the difference between what black gay people are doing, like the Sandra Bland thing, and that situation. Is there a difference? And how do we determine whether we should use our voice to stand with someone who was, who died at the hand of our oppressors, versus when do we determine that? How do we determine that? Because I feel like there's a similarity between the two. I could be seeing it wrong, but can you tell me if there's a difference between those two?
They are, in essence, that's a wonderful question, and I'm glad you drew that parallel, Queen. In my opinion, they are one in the same. In the Stephon Clark situation, you have a black male unjustifiably murdered by the police, and we subsequently find out that he had a lot of negative things to say about black women, that he would not date a black woman. He was not dating a sister. At the time of his murder, he was dating a non-African woman, and I forget her ethnicity. And so a lot of black women said, we cannot stand in protest of the police violence against his brother because he did not support us. It's the same thing with Sandra Bland.
Thank you.
So in that case, that was the feminist movement, black feminists. Well, in the case with Kevin Hart, it's the black LGBT. And they're saying, in the case of Kevin Hart and in the case of Sandra Bland, we can't support the Sandra Bland documentary because she made an alleged homophobic comment about us. And the comment wasn't even homophobic. She said, I have family who are gay, I have friends who are gay, I don't have anything against them, but being gay is not the same as being black, and if we put as much attention on protecting black life as we do in protecting gay sex, then maybe black people would be in a better position. I totally agree with what she said. In fact, I say it all the time. But again, in both cases, in the Stephon Clark situation, the feminists are driving a wedge within the community as it relates to an issue that all of us should be passionate about. And then in the Sandra Bland case, the homosexuals are driving a wedge in the black community about an issue that we should all be passionate about. Notice how both issues are about police brutality.
Right.
The Sandra Bland case, police brutality. Stephon Clark, police brutality. And in both cases, what do you see? A white movement, feminism and homosexuality, a white movement coming into the black community to divide and conquer, separate and rule, and split our political force towards destroying and eliminating police brutality. In other words, here's the point I want to make. The LGBTism and feminism and multiculturalism are the new white supremacy. This is the new racism. Racism has reinvented itself and has put on a new cloak. One cloak is homosexuality, the other cloak is feminism. And if we want to destroy Kevin Hart, we're not just going to come with some alpha white male racism. We're going to say that he was insensitive to gays. If we want to undermine the black community's campaign against police genocide, we're not going to come with some alpha white male racism. We're just going to say Sandra Bland was insensitive to homosexuals and undermine the war, the black community's war against police genocide. If we want to protect the police in California who took this young black man's life, we're not going to come with some alpha white male racism. We're going to say that he didn't like black women and he didn't date black girls. And thus we're going to energize the black feminist community against Stephon Clark and do what? Take attention away from the true enemy. Take attention away from the true issue. Take attention away from the true crusade, and that is to crush white supremacy in the form of police genocide. Homosexuality and feminism are nothing but the new tools of racism.
Oh, wow. Ashe. You put it that way.
Yeah.
Can we go into and elaborate for those who still have difficulty believing that there is an agenda at play, a homosexuality agenda at play? For me, what made it resonate so much for me was that I realized when I was growing up, there may have been 2, maybe 3 homosexuals that we knew of in our community. Everybody knew who they were, but that was them. And now here we are, not even a full-fledged generation later, and this just expounded to everywhere. They're in every facet of society. It just went from 0 to 360 overnight. And for me, that's not a normal progression. Normal progression is a systematic, slow progression of things. This thing went from 2 people to 200 people in your community overnight. So for me, that was enough for me to realize that this is something is abnormal going on here. But can you kind of explain to us what you would say to those who say there's no homosexual agenda at play?
a couple of points and an excellent question. The homosexual agenda is being funded by heterosexuals. Say that again.
Wow.
The homosexual agenda is being funded and orchestrated by straight white men and straight white women. Why would heterosexuals be behind the rise of homosexuality? And it's real simple. Population control. They have tried every weapon under the sun to control and reduce the numbers of black people, not only in America, but internationally. I am a Pan-Africanist. This is a Pan-Africanist problem. It is everywhere. So we use abortion, and it has been effective, but it has not brought us a victory. We've used AIDS. It has been effective, but it has not victory. We've used Ebola. We've used cervical cancer. We've used prostate cancer. We've used hysterectomy. We've used black-on-black crime. We've used mass incarceration. We've used police genocide, mental illness even as a weapon. We've used food, poor diet, nutrition, and yet and still, black people are still the largest population on the earth. We need a super weapon. That super weapon is homosexuality. Unlike every other strategy used, with homosexuality, you don't have to kill the life that has already been created. With every other strategy I named, you're working in a reactionary fashion. You're trying to kill a life that has already been conceived. With homosexuality, you prevent life from being created in the first place. See, with homosexuality, you change the boy's natural desire for a woman into an unnatural desire for a man. You change the little girl's natural desire to be with a boy, and you change it into an unnatural desire to be with a girl. So homosexuality is a super weapon, because if you can successfully change the natural sexual appetite of people so that they are now unnaturally attracted to people of the same gender, the semen can never fertilize the egg.
Now, how do they do that, though?
So with homosexuality,
Dr. Umar?
you prevent the reproductive energy of the man from ever meeting up with the reproductive energy of the woman. It is the most Machiavellian and effective strategy racism has created to control black numbers.
How are they doing that, though?
Excellent question. Well, let's go back. First of all, this grew out of the Black Power movement. This grew out of the Black Power movement. Stan Lee, I believe it was, the white man who created the Black Panther character, when he created the Dora Milaje military group that you saw in the Black Panther movie, one of them was lesbian. It's not the whole military brigade of women. One was a lesbian. The lesbian black movement protested Black Panther. We didn't hear about this because Walt Disney has so much power that they were able to silence them. But the black lesbian movement protested the Black Panther movie. They wanted it shut down because they did not properly cast the Dora Milaje as the lesbians Stan Lee created them to be. Why is that relevant? Because towards the end of the Black Panther movement, the Black Power movement, the government assault against the Panthers and the Black Liberation Army, you get this comic book character created with a gay character when you know that the Black Power and Black Liberation movement did not tolerate homosexuality. The reason that character was put in there is that was the beginning of the propaganda campaign to make homosexuality acceptable to black youth. It goes back that far. It got its greatest push from Barack Obama, but it goes back to the 60s. So, also in the 60s, they assassinate Dr. King, 68. The very next year after they assassinate Dr. King, the word homophobia is invented by a Dr. Weinberg, a doctor of clinical psychology, as am I, and a psychotherapist. He created the word homophobia the year after Dr. King was murdered. No coincidence. Homophobia as a concept was created in order to turn the civil rights movement into a crusade for human rights and civil protections. And in order to do that, you first have to uncertify homosexuality as a mental illness. which it was
Yeah.
until 1974.
Right.
So creating the term homophobia gave momentum to the gay movement to force the American Psychiatric Association to decertify it as a mental illness. And also, please note, the same man that invented the word homophobia was instrumental in getting the American Psychiatric Association to remove it from its list of mental disorders. Once it was removed from its list of mental disorders, the United States government, again, heterosexuals, picked up the homosexual movement and used it to eclipse, block out, and totally bury the black agenda. The gay agenda was created by heterosexual white males to destroy the black agenda.
Wow.
So, Dr. Umar, as you're speaking, this just came to my mind. So I'm just kind of looping in the kind of the history that you just gave with the idea that people still say homosexuality is a choice. And the reason why I'm touching on that is because I feel like we're beyond that at this point, that there are many factors that's contributing to people becoming homosexuals, because you can think of many cases of individuals, and they'll tell you where they grew up, maybe let's say an extremely religious home, not that that matters, but they weren't allowed to maybe watch television or whatever it may be, and they may say, I felt like this since I was 10 or something like that. I think there's a discussion to be had around homosexuality. Simply, I think we've simplified it to it's just a choice, and I think we're beyond that now, because now you're talking about genocide. You're talking about government involvement as far as food, education, all of these factors. Can you speak to that, where it's not just as simple as someone waking up today and say, I'm gay, where the factors that are involved in the process, as we, as we look at it today, it's not the same as maybe back in the day when the church would just say, well, it's a choice. I feel like we're sort of beyond that. And maybe you may disagree, but do you think we're beyond just simplifying it as that's that person's choice?
Okay, great point. Very great point. And the reason why your point is well taken is in both the Kevin Hart and in the Sandra Bland situations that are now at the forefront of the media conversation, they both alluded to homosexuality as a choice. If I'm not mistaken, Sandra Bland's exact words were, being gay is a choice, being black is not. When Kevin Hart said he doesn't want his son to be gay, that is suggesting that it is a choice. The reason that angers the LGBT movement is because their primary narrative and propaganda point to get people to accept their lifestyle is to create this narrative that it is not a choice. And the reason why they need to create a narrative that it is not a choice is because it would make your opposition to it almost indefensible. It's similar to the pedophiles agenda, the North American Association of Man and Boy Love. It's the same argument that's being made by pedophiles who want to normalize sex with children. It's the same argument. They say that these men are born with a natural disorder that has them sexually attracted to children. They cannot help it. It is nothing they can do about it. So instead of criminalizing them, let's have compassion for them and let's seek to understand them. It's the same argument. I want y'all to see how every branch of the LGBTQ movement is trying to use the same strategy, meaning I am sexually deviant by nature. That's the argument. Not nurture. I am sexually deviant by nature. And the reason why that is total nonsense for me, having been a therapist for 20 years or longer, is, and let's be clear, all mental illness is culturally defined, ladies. All mental illness is culturally defined. So a lot of this has to do with the concept of cultural genocide, because you have white people, our enslavers and oppressors, coming into our community and saying that although we know this is not African by tradition, you're going to accept it. That's cultural genocide. That's cultural imperialism for another people to force their unnatural lifestyles on your people. But getting back to the point, most black males and females I know who are gay and lesbian, who I've worked with and who I know, all of them were introduced to that by way of child molestation, nearly everyone. For the women, nearly everyone sexually abused. That's the number one reason you have this in the black community. And the reason why I take issue with the sexually deviant by nature, naughty by nature argument is because it totally evades the cause for the rise of this type of behavior in our community, and that is childhood molestation, which is something that black people don't want to deal with. So if we adopt this false narrative that they're born this way, we never get down to the core causes of why it's happening, which means we never get rid of this problem. But with that being said, I would also concur that because of the popularity of homosexuality in public schools today, that many black children are coming to homosexuality and lesbianism and transvestism, not because they were touched, but simply because they want to be part of the in-group. Let me say that again. The gay gangs are some of the most popular gangs in America's schools. Being gay is faddish now. Being gay is hip. Being gay is cool in a lot of America's cities. Even acting gay if you're not. You see it with the skinny jeans. You see it with the man bag. You see it with the man thong. You see it with the pump shoes for men. They have made being effeminate popular. So a lot of black boys who were never masculine enough to be down with the football team. They weren't masculine enough to be down with the basketball team. They weren't masculine enough to hang out with the boys on the corner who all the ladies wanted to be with. So they're just these awkward kids searching for a place to be. And so now being awkward is the in-group. Come and be with us. But in order to be with us, your initiation, okay, is to participate in a homosexual ritual. And so I would argue that a lot of our kids are coming to this way of life now, not because of abuse, but because of a desire to be part of something popular.
Wow. Yeah, yes, it's definitely acceptable, a lot more acceptable these days than it wasn't. And it seems like, you know, the more we just accept it and go with it, the more of it we see.
And the younger.
But I heard you say something interesting, Dr. Umar, about that. You said it's interesting how we'll be acceptable of it, but none of us really, if we're really honest with ourselves, we don't want our children to be homosexuals.
Exactly. Which brings up another problem. And that problem is this: our children are confused. They are absolutely confused. Because on the one hand, they see their parents defending or trying to ignore this issue that needs to be dealt with in the home, but at the same time telling them that they don't want them to partake in it. Let me say this. The homosexual army is a very strong and very dictatorial bully campaign. They are bullying people to joining. They are bullying people to accepting. And if you are a black parent raising black children today, and you do not raise them with a strong heterosexual identity and purpose, I can almost guarantee you they're going to be drafted by the Army. And most people would say, well, why do you use a Army analogy to deal with the LGBT? Because they are at war with anybody who doesn't agree with them. Let me ask you a question. When is the last time you saw a social issue that had its own flag?
Wow.
Let's think about that for a minute. There's been campaigns against domestic violence. There's been campaigns against child abuse. There's been campaigns against poverty, pedophilia, police genocide. There's been campaigns against capitalism. Can you name me a social movement that had its own flag? Wow. You can't. The homosexual movement is the only movement in American history, social issue that has its own flag. Why does the homosexual movement have a flag? Because they see themselves as a nation. And what do nations do? They conquer other nations and force them to be a part of them. And right now, the LGBTQ nation is at war with the black nation, and they're trying to force us to be a part of them. The question is, what are we going to do about it?
That's a real good question, and it's real, and it's truth in that. I remember about a year ago, Baba Baruti asked very nicely on his Facebook page, please do not post anything relating to homosexuality to my page. That was all he asked, his only request. And when I tell you these people swarmed on his page, there had to be hundreds and hundreds of different posts that they were posting, and all kind of obscene posts, and people in, having sexual intercourse, homosexuals. I mean, it was so disrespectful. I could not believe it. And they just swarmed to his page. And from that point on, he was no longer using his page as public because of that. So you're right. I believe it is a war on anybody who pushes back against homosexuality.
Yeah, I think I feel like no, that's okay. I feel like the term homophobic is almost up there with anti-Semitic. In a way, because that's where we're getting. That's pretty much what we're getting to here. But Dr. Umar, you touched very briefly on the molestation piece, which is still like this taboo topic in our community. It drives me insane, right? So for me personally, we having a conversation. I find it really hypocritical. I think it's a little bizarre that you can have people in the and just by the way, what Kevin Hart said about his son, there are many homosexuals that say that. I don't want my child to be gay if I had a choice. Wow. They will tell you that themselves. So I didn't even see anything unique about Kevin Hart saying, I don't want my son to be gay. There are homosexuals that actually say that about, children of their own. But the molestation piece, we have to be careful as a black community. You cannot be, on one hand you say, I don't want my child to be gay, and on the other hand you fail to report the pedophiles in your community. You have an uncle that's a pedophile that lives with you, and you say, I don't want my child. If you don't want your child to be gay, then you have to expose the pedophilia that's happening in your own home as well. And I find that in our community there's this thing, it's around pedophilia. It's like secrecy. Where does that come from, Dr. Umar, and how do we begin to kind of unpack that so that we can actually address it and deal with it and actually help the people who have been destroyed emotionally, psychologically, even physically sometimes, begin to heal? Where do we start?
Excellent question. And right before I answer that, let me just remind your listening audience, if I may, that Dr. Umar will be back in Washington, D.C. at the Thurgood Marshall Center, Kwanzaa Friday. That's Friday, December the 28th at 6 p.m. All children are free. Brothers and sisters can get their tickets at drumarjohnson.eventb.com. And that's Friday, December the 28th in D.C. at Thurgood Marshall. To answer your question, here's the problem. Black people are not yet ready. We are not as dedicated to the struggle as we claim to be, because we are not yet ready to clean our own personal homes out from people who live a life that is contradictory to the best interests of our community. See, that's the hypocrisy of black liberation. That's the hypocrisy. We don't mind policing your house. We don't mind policing his house. We don't mind policing their house, but don't ask me to police my house. It reminds me of something, the Mau Mau militia, the Land and Freedom Army out of Kenya, and Brother Dedan Kimathi. And one of the things that they would do when they would bring new recruits into the Land and Freedom Army of Kenya, the Kikuyu, they would say, how many of you are willing to die for liberation? And then everybody raises their hands. And then they say, put your hands down. And then they say, okay, everybody's willing to die for liberation. That's good. How many of you are willing to kill for liberation? Only a few hands up. And then they would say, for those of you who raised your hands, grab a gun and now kill the ones who didn't raise their hand. Because if they're not willing to kill for liberation, they will betray your liberation. So they have to be taken out right now, because if we let them go, they will betray this whole struggle. Again, it speaks to the fact that most of us have a limit with regard to how far we're willing to go to cleanse our own inner circle of people who are living an anti-revolutionary, anti-liberation lifestyle. Black people don't have the commitment. We don't have the commitment to our liberation the way we claim, because we're not yet willing to extend that commitment to holding everyone accountable, including relatives and close friends. No one is totally committed until you are willing to expose relatives and close friends for anti-African behavior, and most black people are not willing to do that. There is still a loyalty to family and friends. Even when they do things against the community, there's still a loyalty to them that supersedes our commitment to the people.
I think of drug dealers when you say that, where there's a lot of communities that, and of course that's a really complex thing, but that's just one example that comes to my mind, because there's a lot of that in our community where this person is bringing in, and that's whether it's bigger than that person or not, the fact that that person is participating in their own people's genocide, that person becomes an enemy of the people in my eyes, but we don't label them as such.
And a lot of times we glorify them.
We glorify them,
opposite.
yeah. It's
Yeah, we glorify. I'm wondering, as I flip through the TV channels, which is rare these days, but when I do, I see depictions all over the place of interracial relationships. Mainly black women with white men. They're on TV commercials, they're in print ads, they're on billboards, they're in all of the shows. I mean, what is that about, in your opinion, Dr. Umar?
It is a glorified form of self-hatred, is what it is. See, the black man who dates the white woman is looking for validation from his oppressor. The black woman that dates the white man is likewise looking for validation from her oppressor. Let's think about it for a minute. What greater way to boost my low African racial self-esteem? What greater way to boost my African racial self-esteem than to have a member of my oppressor's family look me in the eye and tell me that they love me? For the low self-esteem, self-hating black man, there is no greater accomplishment on earth than to have a white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman look him in the face and say, I love you. That is the ultimate validation. For him, when she does that, that tells him, I am equal to white people. That tells him, I'm not up. That tells him my life is worth something. For a black woman to look a white man in the eye, to stare at blue eyes, to stare at a white alpha male, the absolute controller of America's political and economic destiny, an extensive symbol of the same white Jesus she's been praying in church to her entire life, for that blonde-haired, blue-eyed cracker to tell her, I love you. That is the ultimate form of validation. That validates her womanhood. That validates her femininity. Now, all of a sudden, her dark skin doesn't feel ugly. All of a sudden, her nappy hair doesn't feel ugly. But here's the problem, y'all. Here is the danger in that. Let's take our sister Serena Williams. What is going to happen to that same false sense of self-esteem and validation when Serena Williams' husband looks her in the face with those same blue eyes and tells her, I'm leaving you for a white woman? Do you know what that's going to do? Not only is that going to destroy the false self-confidence that she had, it's going to leave her worse off than she was before she met him. That's the problem with that, because it is superficial. It is not real. White people do not date black people because they love them. White people date black people because they can use them to further their own personal, political, and economic agenda. It is never about love for Europeans. It is only about love for us. What we are seeing before our eyes is the destruction of the black family in 6 easy steps. Number 1, incarcerate and exterminate all the alpha males. Number 2, promote feminism. Number 3, use the child protective services to steal all the children away. Number 4, use family court to breed dissension, mistrust, and hate between the black man and the black woman. Number 5, promote interracial marriage as much as you can. And number 6, teach LGBT in the public schools.
Wow.
What just came to my mind is I read some articles around China's presence in Africa and how a lot of the increase in Chinese men marrying black women.
Right.
And what came to my mind is the book, The Destruction of the Black Civilization. Is that Chancellor William?
Yes.
He speaks a lot about that. And I'm like, this strategy isn't new. You know, it's not about love. It's a strategic move oftentimes.
Yeah.
It's about land. It's about resources.
Good teacher.
And we're usually the ones, black people are, those are just not our strategies, you know. But this is like history repeating itself, you know, in a sense. Because when you read that book, you're like, oh wow, this was just strategic because it was about power and domination at the end of the day. You know, because you put this is what's happening now. We have mixed children and there's a confusion there. There is no side to be chosen.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
And they're being used.
And
they're used to be the buffer.
Right, exactly. So it's for black people to wake up, like you just said, Dr. Umar, about this isn't really about love. I'm not saying that no two people of different races fall in love, but I'm saying for the most part, a lot of the times these are strategic moves if you really pay attention to it. And I don't know, I feel like black women, and I consider this as a woman, we are the ones that are a little more accepting in the sense, like glorify it when I say that. Glorify it more than anything. And of course I understand why. There's that divide between the genders in our own community, where the black man now has become our enemy.
Civil war.
And the black woman has become the black man's enemy. And when that happens, we're going to start looking outside of ourselves for building families and love and so forth. Dr. Umar, how do we try to buffer this or stop this from trickling down to the next generation? What things need to be put in place so that my son, for example, you know, don't grow up? I know my part in that, but there's influence all around. How do we protect our children and teach them otherwise? Because it's kind of hard in this society. So give us some steps in going about, how do we go about doing that?
Well, number one of the worst things black parents can do today is to give their child a smartphone. Because every black child in America, as young as 5, 6, and 7, has their own smartphone. Now, before, we just had cell phones. You could only call, you could text. Now they have the whole world in their pocket. Every pornography site, every homosexual blog, every lesbian show, every social network discussion on the topic, and our children are too young and politically immature to be processing that type of dialogue and conversation. So we are literally, by extension of those cell phones that we buy our children, we are basically handing them over to the LGBT propaganda machine to be drafted into the army. I mean, I get phone calls and emails every week from another black parent talking about, how did this happen? I go to a church where we don't believe in homosexuality. How did this happen? I'm a Sunni Orthodox Muslim. We don't believe in homosexuality. We don't believe in this at all. Our children know it. How did he become gay? How did she become gay? Where is this coming from? Well, it's coming from the fact that you allowed the American propaganda machine, a $500 million enterprise. You gave them your child's mind to be used at their own disposal. Black parents are complicit, and black parents are guilty in the fact that we are not protecting these young, impressionable African minds
from all of this toxic social media, toxic internet, and toxic information that's being put out before them. The other thing is education. If Barack Obama kicked open the school door and let the homosexual agenda right in, Barack Hussein Obama kicked open the public school door and let the homosexual agenda right inside of it. They are teaching gay studies. They're not calling it that in every case, but it is all in the social studies. You're not taking a social studies class where they're not dealing with it. You're not taking a history class where they're not dealing with it. You're not taking a civics class where they're not dealing with it. You're not taking a health class where they're not dealing with it. In Chicago, a couple of years ago, one of my fellow educators gave me a worksheet. It was a homosexual worksheet, but they didn't call it that. The worksheet was teaching middle school black kids in Chicago how to use a anal condom. I hope y'all heard what I just said.
Yes.
They were teaching fifth graders how to properly use and insert a anal condom. Why are you teaching straight black children about gay sex protection? This is what America has become. The schools are not places to teach. The schools are places to indoctrinate.
That's right.
Which brings me to my last point.
That's
What
right.
are black people doing right now in America? We are in the midst of a historical holiday shopping season. Right now, coons are running all across America to every white and Chinese store, supermarket they can find to buy sneakers and clothes and weave and perms and computers and laptops and video games, a whole bunch of garbage, and give it to their child for Christmas. The child won't even be playing with it 2 weeks later. And they're spending this type of money, but we don't have independent schools. They're spending this type of money because we don't even have hospitals. We don't even have our own shipping network, our own distribution network, our own banks. We don't even have an infrastructure. We don't even have schools for our kids, but yet black people are out here spending their last dime on useless artifacts. And that is why I always say, until there is a psychological revolution, ladies, until there is a psychological revolution, until you fundamentally change the way African people think about themselves and their future, you change nothing else about us.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's like, we allow our children to go to these schools to be indoctrinated because we are indoctrinated. So it's like, we don't know any different because we have been taught these same things. So we think it's fine. All the while, it's destroying our whole entire world.
And it also speaks to our love and commitment to white people, too. Let us not be remiss now. Let us not be remiss in understanding that the reason black people still give white people their children is because that's the way, subconsciously now.
You said, wait a minute, you said because that's the
That's
way.
the way for black people, exactly, that's the way for black people to prove to white people that we're still loyal to them.
Oh, wow.
This is still about that abusive 400-year domestic relationship we've been having with white folks. It is still a form of loyalty. It is still a form of trust. It is still a form of commitment. That's the black man and black woman's way of telling the white man, I am still your slave. I'm even giving you my children. Just let me be a part of the American dream. Black people will do anything, include give their kids over to the white man just for a right to be part of the white man's American dream.
Wow. Agreed. You see us doing it. We'll sacrifice everything to get into that right neighborhood so that our kids can get into that right school. And really, right really means white when you get down to it.
That's right.
We don't want to talk about that, but it's a real thing. And I'm talking about even some of our supposed to be black leaders.
Right.
What school are you sending your children to?
That's
I
right.
have a big issue even with the leaders on the continent, where people talk about the continent all the time, and we need to move there, so forth, and a lot of corruption in the leadership. A part of that is the leaders that are there, their kids are not being educated in the schools that are connected to the culture there.
That's right.
Because they have those schools and the French schools and whatever in underground. And then when they go off to college, they're being sent away to these institutes. So by the time they come back, you're talking 18 years of education.
Fully indoctrinated.
They're fully indoctrinated. They have no love for the soil that raised them, and they have no love for the people. So how do we expect them to not be corrupted? That doesn't make sense. And it's the same thing here.
And
We move heaven and earth. I seen black people do it. You know, and it kind of give them this sense of pride. You know, we live in this neighborhood, and here in Maryland, the counties. Oh, I live in Montgomery County.
And what you're speaking to, ladies, is the contradiction in black consciousness.
Yes.
Because what we fail to realize is we have not had a revolution in African consciousness.
Yep.
I have said
Even
this
those who should
for
know
20
better.
years, and some of the elders in the conscious community have taken great issue with me in saying this, but I will continue to say it because it's true. We have not had a revolution in African consciousness. We've had a revolution in African information.
That's
Yeah.
true.
There is a total difference.
That's true.
The conscious community has brought a revolution in
I
information.
just said that.
It has not brought a transformation in consciousness.
I said.
In other words, we know more
Yep.
about who we are.
Yeah.
We know more
to
about
understand
who
it.
we are. But we have not changed the way we think about who we are and where we are. There has been no change in consciousness.
I
You
agree.
cannot claim to have transformed African consciousness
And you like
and
this
you don't
stuff.
have no African institutions. You can't say there's been a transformation in African consciousness and you barely have African schools. You don't have any African systems in place.
You like
We don't
the
have any
same
African.
old,
When you
same
change
old.
consciousness, behavior changes.
That's right.
That is a fundamental psychological fact.
That's right.
Look at all the brothers and sisters we have on YouTube with all the conscious names and all the conscious rhetoric and all the conscious information. Between them all, they haven't built a single institution for black people. They have brought a revolution in information. They haven't brought a transformation of consciousness. And what I'm fighting for and what you sisters are fighting for is not a superficial change in information, but a fundamental change in African consciousness.
Absolutely. Goes right back to what my sister Hanifah mentioned about self-accountability, holding ourselves accountable. It's like, you know, if we busy pointing the finger to everybody else and making everybody else the problem, well, we have no time to look at ourselves and realize within ourselves that we aren't doing what we need to do to help this situation grow. This has been...
The first R in revolution, the first R in revolution is responsibility.
Yeah.
It's responsibility. And most black people don't want any responsibility to the collective. I'll give you an idea. Normally when I travel to speak, I normally pull a large audience. But when I hold my National Independent Black Parent Association conference, there's always less than 100 people there. Always. Why is it I can get hundreds for a lecture, but I can only get dozens for a conference to do work and change things? Because black people are at a point now where we just want to be entertained. We don't want to do any work. We want to be entertained, and the white man knows this. So as long as you entertain me, you will always get my attention above and beyond somebody trying to transform me. See, we don't want any responsibility, none whatsoever, to the collective goodwill of black folks. We don't want that. No, we don't. We will talk black talk, and we will talk black power, and we will talk black consciousness, but don't ask me to dig in my pockets and do nothing. Don't ask me to roll up my sleeves and do nothing. And by God, you better never ask me to commit to work that I'm not being paid for over a sustained amount of time just to approve something for black folks. You can absolutely forget it. And our biggest weakness right now, our biggest weakness right now, conscious or unconscious, is that you have to entertain us to keep our attention. We are the most politically immature people in America. We are the only people in this country who have to be entertained in order to keep their attention on positive things. If you want to get black people's attention, you got to do something entertaining. I don't care how serious the issue is. We could be talking about abuse, rape, police genocide, mass incarceration, poor health care. If you don't have an entertainment element to your conversation or crusade, we will not pay attention to you. And that is embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. And it's painfully true. speaking of commitment and rolling up our sleeves, I know you put out recently, January 1, you're coming out with a big announcement about the school. Do you care to do an exclusive here on the Empower Hour?
God willing.
Okay.
God willing, if everything goes well, on New Year's Day, I will be announcing the first location of the first Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy. So by that date, my suspension from Facebook should be lifted, but I'm not counting on it. But I do plan to go live from my Instagram account at Dr. Umar Johnson, and I plan to simultaneously go live from my YouTube account at Dr. Umar Ifatunde. YouTube shut my page down, so can't go live from YouTube. So I'm going to try to go live from Facebook, but I will definitely be going live from Instagram. And that's going to be on January the 1st. I haven't decided on a time of the day yet, but I will be announcing that. But if all goes well, we will have our school building by New Year's Day.
All right. And I know we went over time, family, but you know, how do you stop a powerful force like Dr. Umar Johnson for speaking? So, and Umar, can you share with us again? We do have a flyer. Share with us. You're coming to town soon. And all the particulars surrounding that?
Definitely. I will be in Washington, D.C. at the Thurgood Marshall Center on Friday, December the 28th, 6 p.m. Doors open up at 5. That's Kwanzaa Friday. All children are free. Adults get their tickets online for $25, $30 at the door. I don't think there'll be any at the door because it'll likely sell out, but they can get them at drumarjohnson.eventb.com. If they need the flyer, they can text me, or the link for the tickets, they can text me at 215-989-9858. Again, 215-989-9858. But let me also say, I will be in Suffolk, Virginia, Thursday, December the 20th at Temple Beth El, African Hebrew Congregation. Thursday, December 20th. I will be in Atlanta, Georgia, Saturday, December the 22nd, Shrine of the Black Madonna on Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard. That's at 6 p.m. in Atlanta on Saturday, December 22nd. Then it's Washington, D.C., Friday, December the 28th, 6 p.m., Thurgood Marshall Center. The very next day, I'm in Detroit, Saturday, December the 29th, at the Northwest Activity Center, 5 p.m. in Detroit, Saturday the 29th. And then I will end the year and end the Kwanzaa tour with my very last lecture, which will be in Dallas, Texas, at the Texas Theater in Dallas on Sunday, December the 30th. And that will be the last lecture I give in life before I hopefully become the proud owner of the first Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, which we will be announcing on January the 1st, New Year's Day, as we go into our 400 years since we arrived as enslaved Africans in this country. 1619 to 2019, brothers and sisters, it's time for a change.
Ashe, I agree with that. And I know, family, we, our title for today's show was going to be on China's footprint in Africa, but it seemed to take a life of its own. And which we welcome, because that would this.
And I'll come back and do that, ladies. Just let me know when I'll come back on the show to do the China, because I definitely want to talk about
that. Would be great.
I definitely want to talk.
Well, thank you. We're definitely going to take you up on that offer. Thanks again, Dr. Umar. We appreciate your time and attention.
No problem.
Thank you.
All right.
Be blessed, Queen.
Take care. Peace.
Right.
All right, family, as you heard it, that was Dr. Umar Johnson coming to us about, we talked about a lot of different things, a lot of it related to the homosexual agenda at play and how all that is playing out. Again, this is the Empower Hour. We do this each and every Wednesday, Hanifah and I, from 2 to 3 p.m. right here on your eLife Media platform. Subscribe to our channel on Facebook under under the Empower Hour Talk Show on Facebook. And so you get your chime when we go live. And if you can't catch us live, no sweat. We upload all videos on the YouTube station, which is Miss Free the People. That's MS Free the People. So like, subscribe to us there as well. We always have impactful voices like a Dr. Umar Johnson coming and sharing with us here on the Empower Hour. So we invite you into the family. A little bit more about what we do here at Everlasting Life, which is a full-fledged vegan restaurant and lounge, but as you can see, so much more than that. eLife has 3 locations, this here in Capitol Heights, and then there's another restaurant in Tacoma Park, in the DC area of Tacoma Park, and then a brand new location just opened for us in Anacostia in Southeast, right inside of the Anacostia Arts Center. So check them out there for some great tasting food, great tasting vegan food, any of those 3 locations. Here at Everlasting Life, we do a myriad of different events here in the lounge area on a consistent and continuous basis, such as our Children's Night. Each and every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m., children eat free. Bring them as long as they're 12 and under, and they're here with a paying adult. They eat free and they come into the lounge area and they have a blast together. So bring them out every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Children's Day actually is coming up this Saturday. Come on and bring all the children. There'll be a whole festive activities and things for them to do. And not only that, but all you parents out there, you can shop. So while the children play, you can shop with a lot of local vendors that'll be here selling their wares and goods. That usually takes place the Black Wall Street Renaissance every first Saturday of the month. We've extended it this month in December to include every Saturday in December with the exception of the last. So to this Saturday and the Saturday after, come on and join us here for some shopping all day from 12 to 5. And that's a free event. And dinner and a movie, last but not least. Oh, I'm sorry, not last but not least. Every Friday we host a different movie. We we have a big screen and we dim the lights, we turn the music off, and the lounge becomes a theater. And so we air different documentaries every Friday, and then we have a full discussion that follows. So come on out, that's always free. Join us for our dinner and a movie here at Everlasting Life each and every Friday night. Third Saturdays is another marketplace we host here. So if you're in the market for fresh produce, natural supplements, organic herbs and spices, vegan groceries, or anything of the like, you want to be here every 3rd Saturday of the month. That's our marketplace, specializing in healthy foods and products. I have a new show out there on the scene. It's called The Consumer Business Report. So if you are a business owner out there, you definitely want to check me out, because I bring you in just like what me and Hanifah do here into the studio. You bring your product or your service with you. We talk about it and give you a full-fledged interview. We talk about you and your services and how it impacts the community, why the community should support you. And we even sell product right here on air. All that can be done for only $50. Yes, 50 is all we're requesting. So if you're interested and want to book an appointment for a 30-minute session on the Consumer Business Report show, inbox me, AlQamar Malik, and we'll take it from there. All right, broadcasting call on the eLife studio. So if you see what Hanifah and I do here and you think you yourself have a voice that should be heard by a larger audience, consider coming and hosting your own show right here on the eLife studios. You can inbox myself or reach out onto Everlasting Life's Facebook page for more information pertaining to that as well. Okay, family, there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate your time and attention. Don't forget to like our pages, and we'll see you next week on the Empower Hour. Take care of each other out there. Peace.